Wonderful. Sure. So hello and welcome to the first Canada Youth IGF Honorarium Symposium. My name is Dana Kramer and I am the founder, president, and CEO of the Young Digital Leaders of Canada, where our organization coordinates Canada's annual Youth Internet Governance Forum, or Youth IGF, as part of our mission of building the next generation of Canadian digital leaders. Last November, we hosted the 2025 Canada Youth IGF in Ottawa at Carleton University as part of our annual forum. We bring in youth from all across Canada through a Travel and Accommodations Honorarium program. This program works to ensure youth who are Indigenous, living with disabilities, young women working to end technology-facilitated gender-based violence, and overall emerging Canadian digital leaders might attend the forum to build knowledge and networks to accelerate their digital leadership across Canada. We provided 10 of these honorariums with the expectation that, after the Youth IGF, these youth would return to their local communities to complete a local digital community leadership project to increase youth capacity across Canada in becoming future digital leaders. After the Youth IGF, our travelers spent the day learning about digital leadership. They had tours of the Senate, sponsored by Senator Don Arnold, and House of Commons, sponsored by Parliamentary Secretary Member of Parliament Karim Bardisi for Tayacon Parkdale High Park. And later, they met with incredible digital leaders in Canada for mentorship and consultation, which included Mr. Santiago Reyes Borda, who is Canada's counselor to the International Telecommunication Union, Senator Andrew Cardozo, and Ms. Lynn Hamilton, who is a seasoned Internet governance government relations professional. We were thankful to all of these mentors who helped make the Digital Governance Leadership and Civic Engagement Day a success with their mentorship to help build the next generation of Canadian digital leaders. And of course, we wouldn't be able to hold the Canada Youth IGF nor the Honorarium program without the generous support of our sponsors. These include Net Good by Sierra as our diamond sponsor, ICANN as our platinum sponsor, the Center for International Governance Innovation, as well as Canary as our gold sponsors, and Wilson College of Leadership and Civic Engagement at McMaster University as our silver sponsor. We would also like to give special thanks to Apathy is Boring for providing our honorariums with funds and specialized training for hosting civic engagement events across the country. So before we hear from our youth presenters, we would like to show this video, which Sierra sponsored from last November's Youth IGF.
Is an opportunity for young people to come together and talk about things that matter to them. In this case, it's the internet, which is something that we use daily, but we don't always think about how it works.
The Canada Youth IGF started in 2023 as an idea to bring Canadian youth once a year to a central space where they can debate, learn from, and also contribute to evolving digital governance conversations. First, we have 18 to 30 as an age demographic of our key audience. They represent the majority of our participants. Second, we have those who are already established and over 30, because mentorship is a key component of any internet governance leadership that will happen in Canada. And finally, to ensure that we reduce any barriers, we have both a virtual hybrid option to allow cross-Canada coverage, but we also, thankfully to the Sierra Net Good Grant Program, are able to offer up to 10 honorariums to youth from rural, remote, Indigenous communities who might also be persons with disabilities, young women working to end technology-facilitated gender-based violence, and overall emerging young internet leaders so that they can foster their learning and fine-tune their leadership skills so that they can be the next generation of Canadian internet leaders after this event.
The number one issue I see for youth in internet policy is prioritizing Canadian resilience and sovereignty.
Like a lot of today's youth have grown up with like the dog age of the internet, and yet they have no total say about it.
We don't know everything, but we know different things than the other stakeholders. And I think us being present in those discussions gives us this really great exchange of ideas that can make stronger policy and better solutions for all Canadians.
One of the key issues I believe is most important for youth and internet policy is privacy. The number one issue in internet policy would be cybersecurity for me. I believe that youth need a seat at the internet policy table because
They aren't our future, they are our present.
People that created the internet are getting older, and so you need to ensure that young people have an understanding of how the internet works so that they can meaningfully contribute and ensure that the internet continues to be prosperous.
Oftentimes we find ourselves discussed about by politicians and think tanks and different organizations, when in reality, we actually have a voice and we have something we want to contribute.
As youth, as its future stakeholders, not only do we have a want to participate in internet governance, but I think we have a duty to participate in internet governance and how it's run.
What I'm most excited about for Canada Youth IGF this year is meeting people from across the country and getting together here in Ottawa. It's very rare that you get so many people, first of all, interested in the topic, but also coming from different provinces and territories to have these discussions. And that engagement with different people is truly what I think will make the conference what it is.
After everyone goes home, our honorariums will be starting their own community engagement projects so that they can bring their local communities in both their cities or universities, as well as their rural and Indigenous communities, in order to discuss how we can have greater youth leadership in digital governance to keep this conversation going and to keep that energy fueled.
Excellent. So now we'll begin what this event is all about, which is hearing about those projects that those youth went across the country in order to make sure that they could bring in more Canadian youth distributed across Canada into the digital leadership conversation and ensuring that that conversation of what does youth digital leadership look like and what can be the future of Canadian digital governance from that bottom-up youth perspective was not just restricted to those who could attend the Canada Youth IGF, either through a travel support program or by residing in Ottawa as our host city for last year. But that conversation could keep going. So, with that, we will be starting with our honorariums. So I will be identifying who will be starting to begin with, and I'll take it to them, who will be spotlighted. So to start, I will ask Liam to begin in just a moment as I spotlight you. There you go. You're ready to go.
Hello, everyone. Really great to be here. So my name is Liam McCarrigario, and I'm an undergraduate student studying communication out at Simon Fraser University, SFU, in Vancouver. Now, studies consistently show that about half of Canadians distrust generative AI tools. I found that the same pattern extends to young people like me, despite us often being seen as early adopters of this technology. Leading up to my participation in the 2025 Youth IGF, I spoke with friends and peers who really understood how to use generative AI, but didn't see how it could fit into their existing value systems regarding authenticity and ownership. After attending the Youth IGF, it was very clear to me that this distrust of generative AI was problematic, as my peers were missing out on the technology's positive and empowering aspects. They needed the opportunity to imagine how generative AI could fit into their own lives. My solution was Gen AI, the myths, the rewards, and the risks, an interactive workshop designed for high school and undergraduate students hosted at the SFU campus. The workshop was designed around the learning outcome and providing participants with the knowledge and hands-on experience to use generative AI tools in an informed manner that aligns with their own values. So as the title suggests, the workshop focused on three main areas. Firstly, explaining and debunking common myths surrounding generative AI. Then, supporting participants in brainstorming rewarding uses of the technology in their own lives. And lastly, highlighting risks such as bias, hallucinations, data privacy, and cognitive offloading. Participants then put these three lessons together in a final activity where they were split into groups and asked to use generative AI to complete common workplace tasks, such as conducting market research or mocking up an advertisement. During the activity, the participants showed a keen ability to not only spot the risks of generative AI, but also develop strategies to mitigate them effectively. The session then concluded with participants being given a take-home document that encouraged them to use newfound skills to become more involved in the discourse surrounding AI governance. So one of the most striking takeaways from designing and facilitating this workshop was the diversity of its participants. I marketed the workshop to students, but participants end up including professionals and community members of all ages, highlighting how ethical and effective generative AI use is of genuine interest to many different Canadians. These participants greatly enjoyed the opportunity to engage with this topic. Many told me that they really appreciated the chance to learn from the experiences of others with generative AI and also share their own insights rather than simply being told how best to use it, what prompts to use. 100% of participants 100% of participants reported that the workshop made them more aware of how generative AI tools work. And additionally, all participants stated that it helped them think more clearly about the role they want generative AI to play in their own lives and in society at large. The greatest takeaway for me from this project was that trust in generative AI doesn't solely come from learning how these tools work or how to prompt them well. It also comes from recognizing how generative AI fits into one's own context, workflow, and value system. The project taught me that a more personal and humanistic approach to AI education turn a lack of trust in the technology into confident engagement with it and its governance. So in the coming year, I hope to expand and refine this strategy to AI education and public engagement with these lessons squarely in mind. So I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to have worked on this project and to share it with all of you, and I look forward to your questions.
Excellent job, Liam. That AI capacity building is so important across the country. So after each presentation, we will offer for the floor. If you would like to ask a question, please use the raise hand icon or type these questions into the chat, which we will read aloud, so that you can potentially get some Q&A on that front. We'll go through a few immediately after the fact. But don't worry, if you think of your question afterwards, we will also open up a general Q&A to all of our in-person live participants right now at the end so that all questions can be answered. So at that, does anyone have a question for Liam? Mira.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. Great presentation, Liam. I was curious how it was, I guess, to actually put together an entire event like this. Had you already had experience prior putting towards an event, or maybe just explain a little bit more about the process in depth?
Yeah, for sure. It definitely was my first time kind of hosting like a major workshop like this. I'd done some events that were more kind of large scale, but this one was a bit more, I was facilitating it and we had a lot of kind of interaction with the attendees, which is new for me. So kind of my process was firstly just kind of researching the topic more, kind of determining, okay, high school students and undergraduates seem to be a group that is the ideal audience for this, and then kind of figuring out how I'm going to structure this workshop. And that kind of led to me focusing on the myths, the rewards, and the risks through that research. After that, a lot of it was working with some mentors at the SFU School of Communication to kind of learn like what does workshop facilitation look like, as well as using the resources provided by the Young Digital Leaders of Canada to kind of plan that kind of format, make a slide deck, and then turn it all into the actual event. So it was a lot of fun to put together in that sense, and it really gave me some skills around kind of facilitating that sort of discussion. I think was the really big takeaway there. So great question.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Liam? So we have one in the chat from Hamad Khan asking, were any attendees surprised by the information you shared?
That's a great question, Hamad. I would say I definitely think so. When it came to some of the risks around data privacy, it seems like coming into the session, a lot of our participants are already concerned about things like cognitive offloading and things like bias, but really kind of learning how these tools worked, how they were kind of built around these predictions, and realizing as well as how much data that they kind of consumed when you're using a generative AI service was really surprising to a lot of our attendees, and I think that was something that when I was kind of sharing that information and when we were kind of having discussions around that, it was kind of like a new lens for people to look through. So I found it was really rewarding for me to kind of not only encourage their kind of current thoughts around cognitive offloading and around how they use it in their work, but also consider this additional aspect of data privacy.
Thank you so much, Liam. So we'll move on to our next presenter, which is Nahid Mir. And let me just spotlight you for everyone. You're good to go when ready.
Hi everyone, my name is Nahid Mir. I'm from Montreal, Quebec. After I got back from the Youth IGF in Ottawa, I spent a lot of time thinking how to bring these big topics like AI, internet governance back home. I noticed that on campus, students are either terrified of AI or totally obsessed with it, but a very few feel like they have a say on how it's governed. So I wanted to create something that would meet people where they already were. I organized a project called Concordia Concordia Youth Declaration Policy Jam. I partnered with the Student Society at Concordia University here in Montreal to host an interactive pop-up workshop in the Hall building. If you know Concordia, you know that the Hall building is in the heart of the campus. It's where a 12-story escalator moves thousands of students every single hour. I knew that to get people to talk, I had to make it low pressure. So I made the whole thing totally anonymous. I just set up a small table right near the main escalators with 3 large interactive boards. Students were given post-its and invited to stick their concerns, ideas, and answer to the following specific questions. And of course, I used a massive jar of candy as the ultimate icebreaker, or should I say bait. So the first question was, how do we stop AI-generated misinformation? How can we make sure rural Canada has the same digital access as Montreal? And the third one was, should AI companies be forced to disclose their carbon footprint? The scale of engagement was a massive proof of concept. We were there for about 4 hours during the peak transition hours, which was around noon. Over 1,000 students walked by our station. Now, even though not everyone felt comfortable enough to grab a marker and leave it posted, I'd say about 70% of the students who walked by actually stopped, even if they were in a rush to read what others had written. We had over 400 people physically stop to interact with the board and ask questions. And in the end, we collected over 95 post-it notes. This is where it got exciting. We weren't just talking to techies. Just because they were from such different backgrounds, we got concerns from all different places. We had overall engineering students who were worried about the literal power use of AI use, the energy and the water needed. Commerce students were more worried about the ethics of algorithms making hiring decisions. Art and science students were talking about how misinformation online can actually hurt real world activism. But what was truly fascinating was actually the common ground that we found. Despite the different degrees that everyone had, I realized that the students shared two major unifying fears. The first one was cybersecurity, where a massive concern about how vulnerable our personal data really is in an AI-driven world. And the second is the workforce. So a deep anxiety about AI taking over jobs and what that means for a future career. The biggest thing that I learned is that anonymity is a powerful tool for engagement. When students know their name isn't attached to a comment, they're much more bolder and much more honest, in my opinion. I felt that they were more comfortable talking to me rather than, having their names and their degrees and personal information shared. I also learned that my role as an organizer is simply to provide the platform and to step back so that their voices can be heard. Honestly, the students had an amazing insight, but they just needed a place where they felt safe to share them. So a huge thank you to Youth IGF for the honorarium, and I'm really proud to bring Montreal voices into our national conversation. Thank you.
Merci, Nahid, and congratulations. To that end, we'll open up some Q&A to Nahid to ask about her project. So please just raise your hand and we will ask your question too if it's posted into the chat. One question that I have for you, Nahid, is for the engagement that was happening after people stopped and left notes, were they also engaging with you in different capacities, like maybe in classes, or did that help kind of raise awareness that you became kind of like that digital policy person on your campus?
Well, actually, it opened up a big subject in our society. We have a society here at Concordia, and we were actually thinking about opening up another society, which would be AI driven. I did push that as well into the school. It does has to go through a board, first of all. So we are talking about that. So I feel like that pushed it more. People did not really come up to me. I think that maybe people were shy. But overall, we were thinking about, since they had a really good outcome, I think we were thinking about opening up a big, another society about AI or internet governance because we don't have that at school.
Wonderful. And is there Mira?
That was a really great presentation. I can't believe the amount of engagement. That's absolutely incredible. What I was curious about is you had like three very distinct questions that I feel like covered a lot of categories. I think one was kind of environmental, one focused on rural. I was curious how you developed those questions, like how much thought went into it in making them so distinct.
So first of all, it was all with the help of the Youth IGF, where when we had great conversations, I did pick that up from that. And second of all, since I am a leader for the environmental case as well, I did want to bring that up a little bit of, I wanted to bring a little bit of side of me as well into that conversation and to see if AI and environment was important to these students. And I did find that it was a main cause. So overall, I would say that the Youth IGF helped me out a lot as well.
Great. And Nahid, you have a question in the chat from Ahmad
Mhm.
Awadella asking, in your opinion, what factors are driving students' hesitation or fear around using AI tools?
Ooh, oh my God, that's a good question. I think overall it's the fear of our data being taken. Because for me personally, it is that I'm mostly scared to give my personal data. I feel like that's a good question. I don't have the right answer to that. But I feel like it's more overall a fear of the privacy and cybersecurity of our data, I would say.
Very interesting. Congratulations on an
Thank
excellent
you so
project.
much. Thank you.
So with that, we will move to our next honorarium, which is Nathaniel Hunt. So Nathaniel, let me just spotlight you, and you're ready to go whenever you'd like.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dana. Hello, everybody. My name is Nathaniel Hunt, and I'm a recently graduated student at Simon Fraser University in the School of Communications. Um, I recently took a job out in Ottawa, so I've relocated, so my event took place out there. And this project began with a simple problem. I thought that the biggest risk when leading a conversation around internet governance was failing to fully address the issue at the scope necessary for the strategic moment we're living in. Privacy matters, online harms matter, media literacy matters, but if that's where the conversation begins and ends, then we risk treating symptoms while missing the larger system that those symptoms sit inside. Because internet governance is not about just safer apps or better digital habits, it is an arena for statecraft. It is where power is exercised, dependence is structured, and where trust is built or weakened, and where a country's ability to act on its own terms can quietly expand or erode. So I designed a youth seminar at the University of Ottawa to widen the frame to encapsulate that. To do so, I turned the workshop into a bit of a diagnostic exercise. Instead of asking participants simply to share their thoughts, I asked them to identify a problem, explain the mechanism, propose a realistic action, and identify the trade-offs. And to support that, I gave the students an integrated framework for understanding where nations commonly bottleneck. And the framework was partly inspired by how ecosystems work in biodiversity. When key conditions are healthy and reinforcing, a system becomes resilient. But when they degrade, bottlenecks and vulnerabilities compound. In my framework, those conditions were capacity, governance, security, sovereignty, prosperity, trust, and then democratic participation. So the group used this framework to tackle two worksheets and share their answers as a group. In the first round, we looked at how digital dependence can narrow Canada's room to act. And in the second, we looked at how weak trust in opaque digital systems weaken participation in democracy and legitimacy. And that structure mattered because I didn't want participants simply reacting to their digital life as they've experienced it. I wanted to equip them with the tools to diagnose it. And we had just over 10 participants, and what stood out to me was how quickly the room rose to this challenge. Once they were given a serious frame, the conversation stopped sounding like vague concern and started sounding like a diagnosis of dependence, lock-in, trust trade-offs, and political interventions. And one example of this that made the shift incredibly visible was the discussion around cloud dependence. And one participant took their own experience with the Google Drive suite and identified that resilience on foreign-owned cloud storage services is an example that Canada is perhaps becoming too reliant on foreign-controlled digital infrastructure to store and organize important information. And when critical systems are concentrated in platforms that we do not meaningfully control, Canada's room to act narrows if access, terms, or strategic interests shift. From there, they proposed investing in stronger domestic alternatives and reducing legal or procurement barriers that make the dependence harder to unwind. And they named the trade-off as well. This convenience is the cost in the short term versus the sovereignty and resilience in the long term that has led us to this tension. And for me, that's the most important lesson here, because I'm reminded time and time again that young people are often capable of more serious engagement than many institutions design for. When we ask people only for awareness, awareness is often only we get. And when we create a space for structure, judgment, and practical reasoning, many are capable of rising to it. Because in the end, that's what we need from our future leaders. It's not the ability to just notice problems, but the judgment to understand these systems, producing them, and the capacity to shape the systems with intention. Thank you. Thank you very much. Nahid, do you see you have a question? Or is that applause?
I think we were having a few applauses. Sorry, I was getting
Perfect.
mixed up in my buttons for a second there. If you have a question, please raise your hand as well. You can type your question into the chat and it will be read aloud to Nathaniel. So to get started, I actually have a question because I'm very interested in digital sovereignty. Um, what was the level of concern, excitement, empowerment, or fear that the youth participants from your event were having? Because we tend to see a spectrum of people are really scared about foreign ownership of critical digital infrastructure. And that there's also too an empowerment of what can we do in Canada, but there can also be trepidation of, oh no, what can we do in Canada? As well of that concern of it might cost a lot of money. It's a question of whether or not it'll work, if the investment will pay off. What were some of the feelings that you were seeing from young people as that next generation who will build out a lot of this sovereign infrastructure?
That is a fantastic question. I think a lot of people walked into the room um, knowing with a knowledge of internet governance based on what they were able to discern from the words internet and governance. Um, and I think a lot of them felt these issues, and being provided like a framework or like discussion about some of the anti-circumvention laws. Um, that exist in Canada that have come into play through like weaponization of trade. Um, Being able to like be presented with here are some ways to mitigate that and kind of reverse some of the effects. Um, Kind of transition that fear from like recognizing a problem, not knowing what to do, to here are some things we have to do, and it is about having the stomach to be able to follow through with it. So being able to be provided with here's what a solution would work, where would we like to apply it? I think everyone was engaged more in fixing and mending the ecosystem we have as opposed to intimidated by the scale of the problem.
Great, thank you. And we have a question in the chat that I'll read out from Diana English saying, I'm still learning a lot about options in digital sovereignty. Some folks are really focused on localization, and others think that localization is overemphasized. What do you think are some of our options?
So, sorry to put you on the spot here, Diana. Thank you very much for your question. But can you just elaborate a little bit more on what you mean in localization in this terms? Because I can see two directions you're maybe taking this.
Yeah, I think people are focused on the locations of data centers and or the territoriality of companies. Um, and there's some folks who feel quite strongly that those are tools that can be used to protect sovereignty. And other folks who see that as like the toothpaste is out of the tube on those. And so are there other ways of regulating or managing that help protect sovereignty even when either data centers or like where a company is based isn't necessarily emphasis. But if there are other ways of you're thinking of the question, again, I am continuing to learn in this space. So if there's another way of thinking about that question, would be keen to hear it.
So what do I think are some of the options to address localization? Am I understanding your question correctly?
So I was asking about the options to create digital sovereignty, and I'm aware that there's this debate between folks
Hmm.
who are very focused on localization and folks who think that that might be overplayed, if that makes sense, and are looking at other options. So just was curious about some of what your thoughts are on like what are the options at our disposal in this space.
Some of the options that I see are at our disposal is, yeah, the location of storage of Canadian data is really important, but um, providing guidelines or rules on, what can be collected in the first place from Canadians is really important, and what you are allowed to do with our data once you have it. It's often the value of these digital systems is a combination of like IP and access to data as a whole. And so, profiting off of Canadian data once you have it should come with maybe more stringent regulations.
Thank you. And we have one final question from Emily Osborne in the chat asking, did Kuzma's digital trade chapter come up in the conversations you had?
Yeah, we touched on Kuzma just a little bit as one of the ways that anti-circumvention came to be. That's kind of the weaponization of trade bit there. But anti-circumvention laws came came into the world uh, at a larger scale than just Kuzma. Kuzma was just one of the ways that Canada was influenced into introducing them.
Great. Thank you so much, Nathaniel.
You're
Great
welcome.
job with your project. So next we'll move on to Yasmin. So let me just spotlight you. And we're ready when you are.
Awesome, thank you. Hello everyone. My name is Yasmin. I'm a student attending the University of Calgary, currently completing a computer science and mathematics double degree. I recently hosted a workshop called Digital Safety by Design. And before I tell you what I covered, I want to tell you why it's important to have these types of conversations. So in the past year alone, we've been seeing surveillance become more automated, more prevalent, digital harassment become more persistent, and the gap between what users think is private and what actually is private grow dangerously wide. So the goal of this workshop was to teach people how to recognize digital threats, understand surveillance, and protect privacy online. I covered threat modeling, secure communications, account and device hygiene, metadata, photos and locations, and surveillance and harassment response. The workshop itself was a deep dive into practical tools and governance-minded strategies. I wanted participants to leave understanding not just what a digital threat is, but how to build a personal threat model and how surveillance operates in everyday contexts, and how to respond to harassment with clarity and confidence. I had a lot of strong interest in this type of workshop being had. In addition to students, professionals, and activists, several executives from the DOSE initiative had the opportunity to join us from California. The workshop was well received and the feedback was pretty clear. People are hungry for digital safety training that is neither paranoid nor condescending. It also ended with a commitment to do one thing to secure oneself. I did have a bit of a technical hiccup though. I chose CryptPad for registration. It's secure, encrypted, privacy respecting, and a great alternative to Google Forms and Microsoft Forms. On paper, it was a perfect choice for a workshop like this. On the actual day, however, the form simply would not fully load for most people interested in registering. And I didn't really discover this until I got a couple messages from people hours prior to the workshop starting. So I did what any normal person would do in that moment. I acknowledged the problem, didn't really try to debug live, and pivoted. So I manually sent out the Zoom link to everyone who registered to participate just in case they lost it, and anyone who expressed interest to me but could not register because of the form. It did work. I did have several people come out who didn't previously register, and I'm sure everyone has experienced technical issues like this. However, it was a lesson learned and something to take moving forward. To close, I did want to outlined the fact that digital safety and privacy isn't really about perfection. It's about resilience, transparency, and awareness overall. Thank you for listening.
Congratulations. And it's always a good reminder of you can plan events as closely as possible, but you will have hiccups right away. We experienced
Yeah.
the same thing today that you try, but something will happen. So it's always nice to get those human stories added in. Thanks, Yasmin.
Yeah, for sure.
To that, do we have questions? And yes, Diana English has said into the chat, we have all been
Yeah.
there. Are there any questions for Yasmin? Well, to start the ball, for going for this, with your project, so it was predominantly virtual. What was the
Yes.
feedback on accessibility that you received from young people? Because we always are looking to try to create third spaces for in-person participation, but in practice, that might not always be the most accessible format for everyone due to commuting to physical location. If they have to live further than, say, a campus, and that can be difficult, even financially, for paying for parking, for instance, or having reliable transit, especially these projects were taking place over the winter in Canada. That
Yeah.
can make bus schedules a little bit challenging. In addition to those living with disabilities might have physical barriers to attend a space in person. So what were your findings on that accessibility front for the hybrid capacity for your event?
Well, I found that most people preferred online. So when I found out about the issue and majority of people preferred online anyways, I just moved out to online. It was originally at the University of Calgary, and as you said, parking can be expensive. Thankfully, Calgary, we've had some decent weather, though our weather has been going a bit haywire recently. But I did find that the online approach worked for most people. There were a couple folks who said that in hindsight they prefer it being in person, but no one really showed up. So majority, if not all, every participant showed up online. So I just it was best to do it. There was one person who reached out to me who expressed wanting to come, but or attend online because it was easiest for her, but her devices weren't really working on Zoom. So that was a bit of that's something to keep in mind, especially with a hybrid approach. I feel like it's more accessible than just strictly online or strictly in person.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Are there any other questions for Yasmin from our audience? Mira.
Yeah, I'll hop in. Thank you so much for the great presentation. I
For
was
sure.
curious if you could speak to, I mean, you attended the conference back in the fall and then hosting your own event now. What was it having those conversations, I guess, in the conference environment versus hosting them on your own?
Something that I found very interesting about both the CIGF and the Youth IGF, something that I noticed is that when we're having a conversation about Canada and how we deal with some of these things, there wasn't really a way to mitigate these things, or Canada wasn't really doing much to protect people's privacy. And that was something that I took away from that and was like, okay, let's have more of a conversation on it. Of course, being in a conference environment, talking to professionals in the field, and even people in policy, something that I haven't really been exposed to because I'm in STEM. It was great to have these kind of conversations and take away what I've learned from those conferences and what I've picked up to put it into my own workshop.
Great. And we have a question in the chat from Hamad Khan asking, were most attendees already versed in cybersecurity or new to the field?
No, they were new to the field. So I try to make this workshop more accessible to people who are not technical. One of the things that I mentioned that we would commit to doing one thing to further our privacy or security. One of the things one of the commitments that was made was to enable two-factor authentication for things, which I'm sure many people who maybe are well versed in cybersecurity would have already done, but people who aren't don't really think of doing it for their social media, especially for their emails, because their emails are a main mode of communication for a lot of things in your personal life, doctors, banks, that kind of thing. Um, but I try to aim for people who are not well versed in that.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Yasmin, for your presentation. Let me just remove your spotlight. So we will now be presenting some videos from some youth who were unfortunately unable to come today to be live, but they've sent us videos so that you can still engage with their projects. In this context, we won't be able to have a Q&A live with them just because they're not in the Zoom room here. However, if you do have questions, please type those questions into the chat, and we just kindly ask that you note which presenter you're asking the question to, and we will forward those to those youth so that they can reply to those questions, and we will send those out kind of in a post report. So let me just reshare my screen, and my apologies if this doesn't go smoothly. So are you able to see my screen? Mira, would you mind letting me know or I see some thumbs up. Okay, perfect. Alrighty, so we are starting with Paige Cox out of Cape Breton.
Hello, my name is Paige Cox. I am from Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, and this is the overview of my project for Canada Youth IGF. I created a workshop for the youth that participate in my program, Deaf Program Cape Breton. And while in this workshop, we looked at just being safe online and just since they're young children, looking at like when you use social media, how you are able to just properly protect yourself. From what I gather, I think the youth had a good time. I was able to make the content accessible. And I think overall, I am pleased with how it turned out and just kind of the structuring, and it seemed to go as I predicted it would go. Yeah. So I would like to thank Canada Youth IGF for my participation in this program and allowing me to participate in this program. And thank you to those who sponsored the participants and allowed me to fly to Ottawa to participate in this from Cape Breton. Thank you.
Excellent. We'll now move on to Dale McKay.
Hi everyone, my name is Dale McKay and I'm joining you from Hamilton, Ontario. My deepest apologies, I couldn't be there live today, but I hope everyone is having a great time. So my community engagement project was titled Research Smarter Ethical AI for Academic Work, a workshop that I held on March 23rd at the Sherman Center for Digital Scholarship at McMaster University. So this project focused on a growing challenge in digital governance, how students are using AI in academic spaces, often without clear guidance on what is ethical, responsible, or even permitted. Rather than approaching AI as something to avoid, I wanted to make a space where students could engage with it critically and build practical skills. So this workshop brought together about 5 or 6 participants for an interactive discussion session. So I framed the session around a simple idea, not shortcuts, but smarter workflow. So we explored how to find strong academic sources more efficiently, identify gaps in our research before we hit submit, organize all our work in one place, and automate citations properly. These are all areas where AI can be helpful, but only when used intentionally and ethically. One of the most important insights was that all participants were already using AI in some capacity, but many lacked clear clarity around boundaries. There was a consistent uncertainty about what distinguishes legitimate academic support from misconduct. So, what stood out to me was how quickly the conversation deepened once we connected everyday AI use to broader issues like academic integrity, data ethics, and power in digital systems. Participants became more reflective and more deliberate in their choices. The question shifted from, can I use this, to how should I use this responsibly? A key lesson I learned is that meaningful youth engagement in digital governance depends on accessibility and trust. Even with a small group, creating a space that is interactive and non judgmental led to more honest and impactful discussions. So, this project extended beyond the workshop itself. Following the session, I was approached with an opportunity to bring this content into a lecture setting with the Wilson College of Leadership and Civic Engagement, which highlights a broader demand to clear practical guidance on ethical AI and academic environments. Ultimately, this project reinforced that students are already navigating digital governance every day. What they need are the tools, language, and confidence to do it in a way that is informed, ethical, and effective. Now, thank you very much for your time, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the day today. Bye.
Excellent. So with these presenters, for Paige for the first one and Dale for the second, if you could please just post any questions you have in the chat, and we'll be sure to forward it to these two honorariums who unfortunately could not be present today. But we're moving on now. So we are excited to launch the first Diana English Community Engagement Award. So this award is to recognize one of our honorariums projects for its steadfast leadership, agile project management, and capacity to increase knowledge amongst youth in their local community. Diana has been an incredible advocate of the young digital leaders of Canada right from our beginning when we were Youth IGF Canada. She has supported our efforts, always offering a helping hand and voice even before we asked for this help, and cheered every small and big cliff we've conquered as an organization. Therefore, as a testament to Diana's unwavering support and her broader leadership in digital governance, we felt there was no better namesake for this award. Now, I would like to share a little about Diana. She is Director of Programs at the Center for International Governance Innovation, where she also leads the Digital Policy Hub Fellowship Program and CG's program on Africa's digital transformation. Diana is a seasoned democracy governance and human rights professional with experience in government, international organizations, nonprofit organizations, and the private sector. She spent 10 years working in the U.S. government, including serving as a director for African Affairs on the National Security Council staff and as special assistant to the Undersecretary of State for Civilian Security, Democracy, and Human Rights, for whom she was an expert policy advisor focused on the security sector reform and transitional justice. She also served as the Rule of Law Programs Director at the U.S. embassies in the Democratic Republic of Congo and in South Sudan. Prior to joining the U.S. State Department, Diana worked in research for the International Criminal Court in The Hague and as a research consultant with the United Nations Department of Peacekeeping Operations. Diana served as a U.S. Peace Corps volunteer in Tanzania, where she focused on HIV/AIDS prevention. She has volunteered with a refugee resettlement agency in New Haven, Connecticut, and is an emergency room crisis counselor for the DC Rape Crisis Center in Washington, D.C. Diana is also a consultant with LexPac Global Services and a fellow with the Truman National Security Project. And now, let me just stop sharing my screen. But Diana, would you like to share a few words?
Absolutely. This has just made my day being able to participate in this. So I am so grateful to all of you for your energy and the gifts that you bring to this. It is as you will have heard in that bio, I have spent a long time thinking about democracy, about good governance, about human rights, all questions basically of how do we take care of each other? How do we take care of our communities? How do we help keep each other safe and keep our communities safe? And you will not have heard anything about technology. So, starting at CG for me was actually my foray into the tech policy space. But as many of my colleagues and I who care about these types of issues, again, including democracy, good governance, human rights, are saying to each other at this point, if we're not moving to tech, tech is moving to us, right? Like if we're not learning about these, the platforms and the fora in which our democracies and our human rights are now playing out, then it's coming for us in exchange. So we are all now trying to get smart in these spaces, and I could not be more thrilled to see this group of young people who are tackling that head on and who are moving towards the technology and who are asking the tough questions about the technology and who are asking the questions about how we govern the technology, and helping those of us who have cared about these values start to adjust to this new forum that we find ourselves in. So I encourage you all to own that space for yourselves, to own your expertise in this space. Many of you are coming up with this technology in a much more organic way than even people. I don't think of myself as that much older than you all, but even people a couple, a little bit older than you all. Like this is a much more organic experience of the technology that you all have than I do, which means that you're thinking about it in the way that it affects your peers, the way that it affects your lives, the ways that it affects our political cultures, in ways that don't occur to those of us who are a little bit, have slightly longer resumes. So please own that, own the leadership that you have in this space, own the ideas that you bring to the table, and continue to think about how in this world of technology we can take care of each other, we can look out for each other, we can keep each other safe as we think about political culture and good governance and human rights in these spaces. So again, couldn't be more thrilled to listen to you all today. It has absolutely made my afternoon. And I coming away, like I said in the chat, like I am still learning about many of these things. And so I'm also coming away with new questions and things to learn about, for which I'm grateful. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you so much, Diana. And sorry, I'm playing a bit of roulette with different buttons. So with that, we will be now presenting who the recipient of the award is. That person does not know, so this is a surprise for everyone. The only people who know are Diana, Mira, and myself. But we first want to say that every single one of the honorarium projects were fabulous, absolutely fantastic. And what this goes to show is that there's such clear emerging digital leadership. It's not even emerging, it is digital leadership in Canada that all of you demonstrated. It was really hard to come to this decision of who would be selected for it. And just know that this was a friendly competition and it was meant to encourage and kind of getting through those winter months where it's not always fun to be planning something new. You kind of just want to go and like hibernate. But this created a nice incentive structure to keep these projects going. So with that, let me share my screen because this will be a sudden surprise. Drum roll. So we are very excited to honor Liam with this year's Diana English Community Engagement Award. Liam's project stood out to our leadership team for its capacity to bring together a wide array of youth, leverage partnerships with his university, have a holistic project management plan with achieving key milestones at set timelines, and his overall consistent, enthusiastic participation and preparation for each of our mentorship calls, which we held with the honorariums as regular touch points on their projects over the past 6 months. So congratulations, Liam, on this achievement. And please, everyone, you make liberal use of your emojis. We are so proud of all of the honorariums and will be sending each of them a certificate of completion for this program. So congratulations on graduating from the 2025 Canada Youth IGF Honorarium Program. And so with that, let me just reshare one last time. So to keep up with our work, please visit our new and improved website, youngdigitalleaders.ca. This website serves as a showcase of our projects, engagement efforts, and hub for digital governance opportunities for youth. And if you're so inclined, you can also donate to our initiative by clicking the donate button and following the prompts to help us continue our efforts in building the next generation of Canadian digital leaders. Finally, we will be releasing our call for topics later today to build the 2026 Canada Youth IGF agenda. We will be hosting the 3rd Canada Youth IGF in Toronto on Friday, October 2nd of this year. We hope to see you in person or online for that event, and thank you and have a great day. And I will end the recording now.